I really don't know how I can really comment on this, what I'm about to say, without offending somebody. But I think it's got to be thought about. So I'm not going to directly say what I'm talking about, per se, a particular incident, but I am going to talk about the deeper thing I want to get at. And that is, can the martial arts cause violence? I'm sure a lot of people are going to say yes. But this is my thing. I know there are people who take up a martial art and it makes them more violent. And it's not necessarily the fault of their teacher. And even if their teacher is making them more violent, that person chooses to stay with that teacher. So they could choose to go to another school that's less violent and doesn't foster as much aggression, but for whatever reason, they choose to stay with their teacher, especially if we're talking about adults. So what happens with some people is they get an itching to try it out. They take it a martial art and then they want to try it. They want to try it out on somebody. Because they either feel tougher or they got this burning desire to see if it's real, if it works, if it really works. And consciously sometimes even, or unconsciously, they will create situations where they have to use their training to defend themselves. And I know it's not just me who thinks this. Because back in the day, and I'm not going to say who the guy is, there was a dude I knew. Wasn't real close, but he was a lot older than me. Well, he's a lot older than me, so I couldn't hang out with him because I was a kid. I was too young. He picked fights with people, which apparently is not hard to do if you go to rough parts of town, according to what he told me and from what I've read. So he picked fights with people so he could practice on them. Anybody remember the Dave Chappelle skit where Dave was talking about when keeping it real goes wrong? Dave's character picks a fight with somebody that's a 10th degree black belt and gets beat up. And, you know, he brings all kinds of shame and stuff on himself. He gets criticized. Well, that's one media example. Another media example. There's an insurance company, I cannot remember the name of the company, where they say, if you do this and then this happens, and then you do something else and then that happens, and when something else happens and that happens, and then when something else happens, the bad thing really happens. Don't let the bad thing really happen. Switch to our insurance policy and blah, 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 blah. But they were talking that, in the commercial I'm thinking of, he becomes the Fist of Goodness. Because he took karate classes. And when he took karate, he wanted to use his karate. So he starts styling himself up to be a superhero, and he ends up falling through a window and crashing into a dinner party. Now, ha 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 ha, that's a humorous example. But what happens with some types, and this is probably somebody who already has a violent disposition in the first place, they take up martial arts lessons and they want to try it on people. Heck, there are people who watch MMA matches on TV and then they go out and try it on people. Don't even bother to take a class, mind you. But they go and pick fights with people. Because they can do MMA because they picked up some moves from television. Now, they might be able to beat up somebody that's untrained with it. Somebody that really knows any martial art. If a TV warrior, I don't mean people actually on TV, but people who watch TV, try that stuff on, they're going to get hurt. But against somebody that's untrained, yep. They can hurt them. And here's another thing. You don't have to be that good at martial arts to hurt somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. You really don't. If you lose all the time in class and your sparring sessions, depending on who attacks you in a real fight, you could probably very easily wipe the floor with them. Because there's a lot of people that think they can fight because they act tough, but they really can't fight. There is a story it's a local, well, I don't know if it's still remembered in my area. The way the rumor had gotten blown up was that people from this particular school went out, picked fights with people, and they got beat up. So you shouldn't train with that school or even bother with that style. I'm deliberately being vague. Okay. Well, it turns out it was only one student from that particular school who went out and picked fights with people because he didn't do good in sparring. He got his black belt, but he always had trouble sparring. So he finally decided, hey, I'm just going to go learn how to fight by fighting people for real. Now, what that guy didn't know, and I didn't directly know some of the people that he picked a fight with, but I knew of a few of them because I think they were like from my county. So I was probably like 3 degrees removed from him at the most. He had bad luck because a lot of the people he picked a fight with knew how to fight. And if I'm not mistaken, some of the people that black belt who had trouble in sparring picked a fight with were black belts themselves. Or they had enough street fighting knowledge where they were black belts or like a 2nd degree, a 3rd degree black belt themselves. See, the streets has its own way of fighting. And if somebody has a talent for it and they get enough fights, they'll figure out, it's pretty much like they're inventing their own system on the fly. So you can't think that just because somebody says, quote unquote, I'm a street fighter, that they have never been trained or that they don't know something. And once upon a time, because if I'm not mistaken, the groups of people that this person I'm talking about now picked a fight with were African Americans. There are African American martial arts. Most of them are kind of sort of underground, really not formalized. But that doesn't mean they aren't there. And a lot of people, if you ask me, have you taken karate? Man, I never take no karate. Or, I never took any karate. I ain't take nothing. But then their father taught them how to box or or wrestle. Or they may have learned at home. So where am I going with all this? Because this looks like I'm going to have to do a part 2. I think with some of the incidents of violence, or violent confrontations that we've had to deal with in our society or that have affected our society, I'll put it like that. I think that the martial arts could have had a role in exacerbating some of those situations. Part 2 coming up.